All right. The first one is we're going to start with, and let me get this bigger here. First tweet says, I just received the contract between North Carolina's Department of Commerce and the ACC. By the way, this is Bill's tweet, so he's the source for this. The state is paying the ACC $15 million. So let's say that again. The state of North Carolina is paying the ACC $15 million in exchange for conducting 67 conference championships in the Tar Heel State. Pulling other documents, it appears ESPN and Fox cash waived at UNC may be trumped by the economic multipliers attached to sports tourist spending. And then you attach the comments. So just that, I obviously have your second tweet here too, but that's what you were talking about, right? This is what you're talking about with the money is 15 million is actually not going to sports necessarily. It's going to the ACC to then put on those sports. Is that right?
No, so that's just going to the conference, and I think they use that for their relocation to they move cities, and I think they use that to help with that move.
Oh, okay.
And then in exchange for that, they agreed to have all these conference championships. And so I saw that. I had seen that story and I had tweeted about that months ago, but I didn't see the actual document. And I'm always I like to have that, kind of be open source analysis. I want people to see the same things I'm seeing. So I put the request in, I got the document, I looked at it. And so I just started poking around for some other documents, looking at their state budget. They've got about $800 million, almost $1 billion for economic development. And I noticed that they had also put aside $25 million to chase after the World University Games. And they bid on 2027. They were successful on 2029. And just kind of looking through the activity in that economic development fund, it seemed tourism heavy. I think they're probably bringing in anywhere from $200 to $300 million a year in tourism taxes in North Carolina, and they use that for generating more tourism activity.
Okay.
So they chased after this World University Games. They were successful in getting it.
Yeah, I can read those. I can read those numbers.
Sure.
If you want me to, let's do that. I'll bring up your second tweet. It's great when everybody can see these. Let me get rid of this comment here really quick. Sorry. All right. This is the second tweet that followed up the other one we were just talking about. It says, summary of my thoughts on UNC's unique situation in realignment discussions. 1, North Carolina set aside nearly $1 billion this year to promote sports, tourism, and economic development. That's the state of North Carolina.
Correct.
2, investments include $50 million to the ACC events, or to host ACC events, and $25 million to win the World University Summer Games of 2029. You just explained that as well.
Mm-hmm.
The ACC provides North Carolina a source to host multiple events that attract fans in the state. So that's the tourism you're talking about.
Correct.
Okay. North Carolina is home to 4 ACC schools: UNC, NC State, Wake Forest, and Duke. Our Duke is private school, right?
Right.
Is Wake a state school?
No, they're. I believe they're private, but I'm not.
Wake is private. Wake is private.
It is? Okay, so they have 2 public and 2 private that are in the state that are all in the ACC right now. Politicians, which is what everybody loves to hear when we talk North Carolina, says politicians in North Carolina are likely opposed to the optics of North Carolina universities playing for the Big Ten or SEC conference championships in Indianapolis or Atlanta, towns that compete with North Carolina for sports tourism. So they're worried they're going to lose money because they're going to be playing these games out of state.
Yeah, and that's my interpretation, having worked in local politics and kind of knowing how politicians view these things.
Okay.
Indianapolis has been promoting sports tourism for as long as I've been in the business, probably 30 years or so.
Okay.
And I think, Atlanta went after the Olympics, and they're hosting the SEC tournament games or football championship. And so there's definitely a handful of places that are actively pursuing sports tourism at a really high level. Everybody's pursuing, soccer, traveling soccer teams and volleyball teams, and
Right.
people are competing for those, those all the time on the local level. But in terms of at a national level, a national scope, there's just a few cities and states that are really going after these big mega tournaments. So that's my perception, is that if you're in that game and you're competing for international sports competitions,
Right.
the thought of having your university go to Indianapolis to play in championship games has got to be a terrible issue in terms of optics for politicians. And putting this in the scope of it, they've got nearly $1 billion for economic development. They have the resources to try to keep things afloat, or even the playing field with UNC and the media revenue pieces that are advantage to the SEC and the Big Ten.
Okay. The last two you have on here are just 5% of the state's economic development budget could address the financial gap between UNC to the SEC or the Big Ten. So you're saying just having 5% of that additional income would make up the difference between what they're currently getting, about 30, with everything, they're about 43, 44 million. And you're saying if they were to make 70 or 80, that still would be only 5 or 10% of that total amount for the year, right? That's what you're saying?
Yeah. And I think, if you look at if this ACC imploded and those 4 universities went all their separate ways, and there were no longer these interstate rivalries, the amount of visitors that are moving around the state, staying in hotels is going to drop off dramatically. So they've got a really good situation now. They've got 4 schools in North Carolina, in the ACC. So they're getting most of the away games are coming into North Carolina. So they're getting those visitors. And, who knows if they were to split off, if they're going to have the same interest in terms of people traveling to those games. They've got a great asset in place. It's probably less money to keep it in place, invest in it, retain it. And that's something in economic development you always think about. It's easier to retain a business than get somebody new to come in.
Right. Yeah.
So to try to grow a sports tourism around 3 or 4 different new conferences that might splinter up, if the ACC were implode, seems to me, if I were a political, if I was advising, if I was in the finance department of the state, I'd be crunching numbers, trying to show a way that you could try to keep them in the fold.
So, Rock, I know you have a question. I just wanted to finish this by saying your statement is UNC stays in the ACC. So, taking all those things, you're thinking North Carolina stays where they're at.
Yeah, I think there's too much to risk for North Carolina politicians to let them go. So I don't see it, but if they break, I just don't see the benefit of North Carolina the state,
right?
Given that they've got such a nice asset and so many games from the ACC and the conference championships, to let that all go so that UNC can play in Indianapolis and Ann Arbor.
Okay.
I don't see that.